This is the blurb for Doctor Who 1963, The Space Race. November 1963, and the Soviet space program reigns supreme. Having sent the first animals, then the first men beyond Earth's atmosphere, now they're sending a manned capsule into orbit around the Moon. Just as Vostok 7 passes over into the dark side, however, its life support system fails. Only the intervention of the Sixth Doctor and Perry, adopting the identities of scientists from Moscow University, means that contact with the capsule is regained. But something has happened to the cosmonaut on board. She appears to have lost her memory and developed extreme claustrophobia. Maybe she's not quite as human as she used to be.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, 1963, The Space Race.
This is Baikonur Control calling Vostok 7. Do you read? I repeat, this is Baikonur Control calling Vostok 7.
Why isn't she responding?
I don't know. Weather interference, radiation from the Van Allen belt, could be anything. We're stumbling blindly into the dark side of the Moon.
Let me out!
Hello, this is the Doctor.
Who are you?
A friend who wants to help.
You will let me out of here?
As soon as I can, but I need you to help me first.
No! Let me out first! Let me out now!
There it is! I can hardly believe it! The first man-made object to orbit the Moon!
By the look of it, you're having trouble regaining contact with one of your space capsules, am I right?
You are correct. How did you find out about the lunar module?
Well, how do you think? It's the reason why I was sent here.
This is Baikonur Control calling Vostok 7. Do you read?
5.
Take one step closer and I'll shoot.
4.
I believe you would too.
3.
I can smell your fear.
2.
Take him.
No.
1.
Wait, please!
Launch!
Subscribers get more at bigfinish.com.
Alright, Philip, give us your take on The Space Race.
I think what I love about this is I love the history and I love the Cold War. And so we've gone from something fairly light-hearted and fun in terms of the Beatles, or not the Beatles, the Common Men. And we've actually moved now into another major event of 1963 and the height of the Cold War. And I love mystery novels. I love murder mysteries. I love espionage. And this has it all. And so, it starts off in Russia with a murder, with the Doctor and Perry just escaping, close to death, having to adopt personalities of Russian spies. It has everything you could want for in terms of this huge, epic Russian story. And it's traveling along so well, and I was just so engrossed in this amazing spy story and trying to get to the truth of that. And then partway through, and it just does this major left-hand switch and becomes something else totally different.
Yeah.
It's similar to there's a film called From Dusk Till Dawn, which is a murder, robbery film, and suddenly becomes about vampires. And it's like, and I wasn't expecting it at all. Like, I went into this film not knowing anything, because I try not to do anything, and just there's a massive left-hand turn, and suddenly I'm not watching the film I thought I was watching a gangster film, and now I'm watching a horror film. I still don't know how it happened. And The Space Race did the same thing. I thought I was watching a Russian Cold War spy espionage story and listened to that, and it suddenly becomes something totally different. Extraordinarily different. So
are we going to spoil it? Are we going to spoil it? I think we do when we chat with Johnny, don't we?
We do anyway. Spoilers, guys. Make sure you listen to these stories if you don't want to be spoiled. Otherwise, it doesn't matter that much. But it suddenly becomes talking animals and aliens, and it is bizarre, the change that happens. But it's so enjoyable anyway.
But it gets more and more busy as the story goes on. A very complex sort of web of tales all comes together at the end.
It's both busy, but then you have these huge periods of nothing, because there's space travel done in real time. And so, you have to suddenly wait 3 or 4 days for more action to happen while you're waiting for the moon, for the rocket to get to the moon or to get back from the moon. And so you've got these huge gaps in time, which, suddenly No
Space
story for 3 or
Pirates.
4 days. Yeah, it is very much trying to do the Space Pirates again, except in the fact that space travel is slow and takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very clever. But what did you think?
No, I was exactly the same. I was listening along, going, "Oh yeah, this is cool. I can see Colin Baker in Russia. Perfect. He's if anyone's going to be in Russia, it's going to be that Doctor, the Sixth Doctor, particularly Colin Baker. You know, we've heard him do Russian accents before, so he would fit into that world very well. Even though they didn't do accents in this.
No, the ordinary RP.
Yes, there was a voice in there. And I didn't look at the cast list before I started, but I was convinced that the actor who plays General Mikhail Leonov was Martin Jarvis. He sounded to me exactly like Martin Jarvis, and I went, right, I'm looking that up. That's Martin Jarvis for sure. No, it's David Shaw Parker. And that's what struck me. It had me sort of had my mind spinning for a little while because I thought it was Martin Jarvis. But yeah, really strong, powerful voice that you can see as a Russian. But yeah, when Leica comes back in the cosmonaut as the cosmonaut, I was like, wow, this is great. It was an eye opener, and I was fascinated to see where this was going. And boy, it took a crazy turn. It was great. I loved it.
It's interesting. I mean, the last time I would have heard this was 10 years ago. So, back then I was subscribing every month. I was listening every month, but I didn't go back and listen to these a second time. Usually I was just a bit too busy. And so this was the first time I'd gone back to it in 10 years. And so I'd totally forgotten really everything. I'd forgotten all the twists. I'd really forgotten the setting. I remember nothing about this before I listened to it. And so it's just lovely surprise after surprise. And I don't remember it from the first time at all. But yeah, it was really great this time. You just mentioned David Shaw Parker. He'd actually come back in the Stranded series as Ron Winters, as one of the neighbours.
Right.
So he's also done a lot of Survivor stuff as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Very cool.
Throw that in for a bit of trivia.
Excellent. Well, we had a bit of a chat, as we mentioned earlier, with Jonathan Morris about this story. So let's have a listen to that now.
Johnny Morris, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, lovely to be here. Hello, chaps. Hello.
So we've been talking about your story, The Space Race, 1963. I just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how you first came to be asked to do this anniversary story.
It would be Alan Barnes, who would be the script editor at that time, who allocated them. And I think it was just that the brief was something to do with 1963. And not a long list of things that it couldn't be, basically. So it couldn't be tying in with An Earthly Child. It couldn't be bringing back old monsters. It had to be new. And I think my brief was the Sixth Doctor and Perry as well, because I think, and I couldn't do the Beatles either because I did pitch that straight away. It was like, no, Eddie Robson's doing that. So it was trying to think of other stuff that was going on then. That I could sort of tie my story into. And so I came up with the idea of it being about what was happening in the space race at the time, because at the time, I think they'd had stuff like Yuri Gagarin had been up in space, and I think the Russians had done their first spacewalk around then. And the Americans were behind. They hadn't really got anywhere. So it was about going, okay, it'd be about the Russian side, the Russian part of the space race, because that's not something that Doctor Who hasn't done. And what was happening in Russia in 1963 is a bit of an open space. I can go, okay, I can make stuff up there without worrying about historical experts finding stuff out, because when I was looking at what was happening there, I couldn't find much out. So it was a nice sort of starting point. And then I just came up with a story which was based around 3 of the biggest twists I could possibly think of.
Excellent. So, in terms of you've got very different. I think one of the things that stands out is you've got long time spaces because you've got journeys to the moon and back again, which all take days to do. Now you're doing that all in real time. Was it hard to plot out the times in terms of? Did you work backwards? Because I mean, the spoilers. If people haven't listened to it, go listen to it first. Otherwise, spoilers are to come. A major event, of course, is the assassination of JFK. So did you go from there and work backwards? How did you work out all your timings to make sure things work properly?
Yeah, the three big cliffhangers. The third one is that the Doctor's in a capsule up in space returning to Earth, and the Americans think it's an enemy, a Russian attack, and they launch a missile at it. And the Doctor sends a message going, get the American president to abort the rocket. And I think the message comes back going, he will, just as he's finished his parade through Texas. We'll get him to do it straight away. And the idea being that the listener goes, okay, that's he's not going to finish that parade, is he? And then they go, okay, that's November the 22nd. And I'll work backwards. And yes, I mean, using the technology available at the time, traveling to the moon and back would take about 5 days or whatever, depending on those things. So that meant while the Doctor was off traveling to the moon, I could do time passing on Earth. And so what became a small threat at the beginning, which was, one or two augmented animals taking over the cosmodrome. After 5 days, it could be the whole cosmodrome has been taken over and the remaining humans are besieged within the main sort of control center. So it actually gives you a way of making things plausible in a way that it takes longer, because you go, that could have happened overnight, but that would be a bit implausible. But after 5 days or whatever it is, everyone's getting a bit claustrophobic and frazzled, and and Perry's sort of taken charge, but she's sort of risen to the occasion quite a lot. And then sort of going back, the whole sort of thing is, I think in part one I do give the date so that it's like November the 11th or something. It's like 10 days away. Yes. Just to seed it in, but assuming that people will not be keeping track of the days, but I'll be keeping track of the days, so I know when it comes to my episode 3 cliffhanger, it'll be bang on, and hopefully it'll be like it's a great moment, because that was the thing of going, how can I tie it in with the Doctor Who anniversary in a way which hasn't been done before? And the Kennedy assassination has been done in fiction, science fiction, quite a lot, in terms of stories about time travelers going back and trying to prevent it. And I didn't want to do that because that's sort of it's been done so much. So I was trying to think of a way of incorporating it into the story without it being something people had heard before.
I did notice you didn't commit yourself to how he was killed, though. It was still, history says it was done by this way, but I need to go check still. You're still open to those conspiracy theories.
I did notice that too.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things in when you write things, you sort of you worry that you might be treading on someone else's toes. That someone's got a really good story out there they want to tell, and I don't want to sort of annoy them. And the same with the moon landing. I have the moon landing at the end, and again, I don't want to sort of. I was actually, because that does sort of, it doesn't contradict, but it is the moon landing turns up again in the Matt Smith era, which was I think around the same time. I think it was, yes, it was probably around the same time. So, but it doesn't contradict it. So you're sort of okay. I mean, that said, the story does tear up established history quite a lot. in terms of going that the American space program, as we discover in the part two, was actually massively advanced, and they already had a moon base on the dark side of the moon, which is my part two cliffhanger. Just going, um, the idea that the Doctor's in a sort of little capsule, he's orbiting the dark side, he looks down, and he can see a stars and stripes already on the dark side of the moon. I thought that's a Doctor Who thing to do. That's that's a real rug pull. That's something that Stephen Moffat would do, or Russell would do, or Chris Chibnall would do. It's you know, and when you come up with those moments, you go, "Yep, that's a classic Doctor Who moment that has to go in."
So when you pitched the story, did you have all the elements in place? You had set in Russia, Russian space exploration. Did you have the whole animals in place with your pitch?
Yeah, I've got the pitch up on my screen now. Haha. And it's really short. It's only 2 pages. And it's pretty much exactly the story as written. I think a couple of the names changed, but it's I didn't have to change very much. I think the main note I got back was just to give Perry more to do, and yeah, I think actually it was all it was quite an easy job, really. I think it didn't go through many changes.
What's your pitch dated at? When did you
It's
do the date?
hang on. Oh yes, we can call that. That's the 16th of September 2012. So it was the day before my birthday. There we go.
Okay,
I'd finished it in time.
September. It'll be recorded the following May.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wrote it in December, the whole story in December, and so that's about normal to have a gap of about four months of allowing for things to go wrong before it's recorded and getting the actors together.
Right. I was always interested to see what the timelines are. So September, you did the pitch. How long before you get before they say yes, go for it?
I think it was about 2 months. I think. Well, I start writing it on the 29th of November. So, I don't even think I think it was probably just an organizational thing of just them getting the contracts together and getting the schedule worked out exactly when they needed it. Because they could have given me go ahead earlier, but I would be waiting for the contract to come through, because I don't start writing until I've got a contract. I've with other companies, not Big Finish, with other companies, I've had my sort of fingers burned in that area, and I make it a rule. And my agent agrees with me that we always wait for the contract.
Yep. Okay. It's just interesting seeing the timeline, because of course this is done for the 40th anniversary special. It also came out in October 2013, but they're obviously already planning a long time ahead. If you have September, you're doing the pitch. So it's interesting how far ahead you have to keep thinking about events that are happening a year, 18 months off, sometimes more than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's compared to some of the stuff now, which is recorded potentially decade in advance, 4 or 5. I mean, that was fairly close. I don't know if that's why they used the sort of the stalwart, like just the reliable ones, the ones who me and my tent pole buddies. But I think that it didn't feel like rushed or late or like I'd no time. It was just it was lovely to be involved with it, and to be involved with it in a different way, because everyone expects an anniversary to be bringing stuff back, bringing back old companions or doctors or monsters, but these was like an interesting. Each one was like a different take on, let's do something different about 1963. and it's that thing you always which you try and do with Doctor Who, which is even if it's a old what's the word, even if it's a 20th century Doctor and Companion setup, you want the story to be new. You want it to be exciting and original and fresh and made and contemporary in the sense that people are listening to it in 2013 or whatever. So you can't get away with the stuff that they could get away with in 1985. The obvious one is how Perry is characterized. I mean, I didn't even need to be asked to go, okay, the Doctor goes up in the rocket and has one sort of plot thread, and Perry should be have agency and be proactive in her plot thread. She should be, like I said, rising to the occasion. Because you can't do the sort of stuff where the companion just sort of screams and points at things before they appear and asks dumb questions. I mean, I wouldn't want to write that, really. It'd be very boring. The actor would find that quite boring to play, I think, and quite sort of, and the listeners would just go, we don't want Perry to do that. We're fed up with it. We're bored by it too. We want Perry to be cool and, telling people what to do and having her own adventures in her own right and driving the story. So, in that sense, it's actually a contemporary Doctor Who story, really. And in terms of the tone as well, I think certainly for part one, I'm setting it up as this sort of Cold War spy thriller.
Yes.
It's all sort of very serious and and they discover a dead body in the snow and stuff, and there is a sort of a who done, and there's a sort of go, who is the spy, who is this well, I do that mainly so that at the end of part one they open up the capsule and there's a dog inside, and you go, okay, it's not about that at all. Everything I've been doing in that episode has been pushing the listener in the wrong direction of what they think. We're going, everything has been going, oh, you think by that point they should be going, oh, this story is going to be like Quatermass. It's going to be like the Ambassadors of Death. It's going to be a really sort of serious and scary and dark spy thriller. But then it goes a bit bonkers because Leica turns up and Leica can speak. And I remember that's one of the few bits of recording I remember is an actor called Samantha Bayard was playing that, and it's not an easy part to play. Being a dog, being an evil Russian dog, and she was brilliant. And when an actor is being really good in a role which could go easily wrong, a role which has to be. I mean, an actor has to go. They have to go for it. They have to play it for real. Not going over the top, not sending it up, and as soon as she was doing that, it was one of those things of going, oh, she's good. We'll use her again. She's coming back. We're not going to.
I want to ask you. I want to ask you about the part of Leica. Did you give any thought to making the voice different sounding to like a human? Was it going to be any? Because I was thinking all the way through, a dog's got a different shaped mouth, even though the voice box is in there, so it still may sound different. But all the way through this play, just sounds like a normal human, which is explained perfectly well. But was there any thought given to that, or was it not something that you even worried about?
I was worried. I think. I mean, firstly for the cliffhanger for part one wouldn't work if it was an alien voice. because you open up the capsule
Gotcha.
expecting an alien, and you needed to expect it to be the cosmonaut.
Yeah.
And secondly, I was just worried that a bad actor would be going, "I'm going to get you, Doctor," and it would be rubbish. It would take it into a. I mean, it's a very silly idea in the first place, and the only way you can really get away with that is by taking it seriously. And so, um, and I didn't want to have that sort of doggy voice or an alien voice.
The
So
film Up,
and
the film Up came out in 2009 with the talking dog in that. Had you seen it? Do you have any thoughts in terms of the talking dog in that, or the dog's talk?
yeah, I've seen it. I don't know if that was a conscious reference. In retrospect, I'm slightly worried. There's a story from a Doctor Who storybook called "The Cats That Came Back," which does a similar thing, which I must have read and must have sort of ingested mentally. Um, and but I must have, and then I forgot I'd read it. I forgot all about it. But that also tells the story of an animal which was sent up by the Soviets and which comes back. But the rest of the story is completely different. There's no cosmodrome, there's no trip to the moon, there's no sentient black holes in it or Kennedy assassination. So, but that always worries me. I don't like to even sort of unconsciously take something from someone else without asking their permission. Never mind, it's too late now.
And the decision not to do Russian accents, I assume that was Nick's decision as well, or was that your choice?
Again, that was my my choice, really. I mean, because there's the convention anyway of the TARDIS, how the TARDIS translation stuff works. That we can go to like Aztec time or French Revolution, and no one is speaking with a French accent. It's and because if they're speaking in a foreign language, the convention is that they don't get the accent for it. No one in the Mask of Mandragora, no one's really got an Italian accent. They're all just received pronunciation BBC Shakespeare accents. So I was throwing that convention, and also I was always worried that unless an actor is playing with their own accent or growing up with when they're very familiar with doing, it is asking them to juggle and sort of spin a plate if you're asking them to do an accent and give an acting performance at the same time. And some actors can do that. Actors can juggle and spin a plate at the same time. But there are also actors who think they can do that, who can't. And and you'll be listening to them going, "Oh, they're acting really fine, but the accent's going," or "The accent's really fine, but the acting's going." And to be honest, I think there's a bit at the end of part 3 where 2 or 3 of them are doing American, which a bit sort of Doctor Strangelove. They are a bit sort of how did this guy from like Rednecksville, Texas, end up in charge of the American space program? I don't know. But that's what happens because in that case you're going, okay, we need you to do American accents, and they have to sound different from the voice you're playing in the rest of the play. And you that's a bit of a roll of the dice, I think. So, but I knew that when I was writing, I was going, they're only going to be in one scene. Doesn't really matter, It's if they're in it all the way through, that would be a problem. But one scene, you just go, okay, we'll just take the risk.
This is the most bonkers script you've ever written? Because I've been looking through some of your stuff, thinking he's out there in terms of.
Well, certainly, it has the three cliffhangers are quite mad, but I take it quite seriously. I think I don't think it's not really a sort of a jokey story. It is actually sort of written.
No, it's scary as it's just a very interesting conceit.
There's bits of hard science fiction. I mean, the stuff about the black hole being used to record information is scientific fact. It's from Stephen Hawking. It's the idea that a black hole would record all the information that was sucked into it perfectly, and all that information would be stored in a sort of in a 2D sort of image on the event horizon. So you would use a black hole as a probe, as a recording device. Is not that it hasn't been done as far as I'm aware, so I was quite proud of that. But there's a story coming up called Fugitive of the Daleks, which is even madder. I've topped myself with that one. I think that one is I mean, people have already gone, oh, it's not, Johnny's just doing the chase again, isn't he? Okay, well, that would be quite a mad thing to do. That would be a mad starting point, but I'm not going to just do the chase again. Oh, no. I'm going to go far beyond that.
So Nicola has a real passion for animals and caring for animals. Were you trying to get across any of we need to be better stewards of and carers for animals in that, or was it just in a convenient storyline?
Well, I'm an animal lover. I like animals, but no, really, I don't think so.
Good story.
I think actually it was much more of trying to make people, make them scary. Actually, or going, when you see animals going crazy at the zoo and stuff, you see, and also the idea of lab monkeys, where you have those sort of awful images of where they've been sort of strapped into seats to test their resistance to gravity, or they've been had electrodes stuck in their heads and stuff. I mean, that's a monster. That's a horrible sort of thing from nightmares. And so I don't know if using that as a monster is sort of showing my disgust for that sort of treatment of animals, or it's me sort of exploiting it as a cool thing to find scary. Probably both. But that was where I was coming from. I was going the idea of, obviously the idea of what the Russians did sending up animals in those rockets, and them. I don't know if some of them would have died deliberately. They'd have been injected with cyanide while they were up there or something, and others would have just died on re-entry or whatever. It is a horrible thought, and that's part of what Laika's journey is, that she knows that was her fate, to be treated in such a, to be the first creature from Earth to die somewhere else, to die in space. And that is something I think, you could write operas about that. That's quite, that's quite devastating as a sort of an existential situation. So yeah, I think that was where I was coming from, rather than it being a piece about animal rights, because I'm all for animal rights, but I don't think that was where the story was.
If you enjoyed what you heard in this clip from the Sirens of Audio podcast, be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell so you never miss out on another episode from us. And if you want to find out more about us, including our back catalogue of episodes, you can head over to sirensofaudio.com.